So the Parliament has come to a standstill yet again, and among the many pending bills in the National Assembly, the one that has raised the most concern is the budget proposal for 2014. For a closer look at the issues, let's bring in Dr. Byoung-joo, head of KL&P Consulting and our regular commentator on this program. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Kim.
Good afternoon.
Now, political observers are talking about the possibility of the Korean government having to start the new year with a provisional budget. Now, before we go into it any further, could you tell us what provisional budget is?
Right. Provisional budget itself is exactly what the name itself says. This is not an official budget. It's not a budget that's passed by the National Assembly. The budget itself, provisional budget, is passed by the cabinet, and that's based on the Finance Ministry's overall plan for limited execution of government spending, because this happens when the National Assembly fails to pass the regular budget. And Korea, for the record, has never had this one before in the history so far, never. And a lot of people are now concerned that this year, for the first time, the year 2014 budget may actually take this form of provisional budget. What happens is, like, if the National Assembly fails to pass it, and by December 31st or 30th, the Finance Ministry is supposed to draw up a draft budget for this provisional budget and the government's plan for spending without the regular budget itself. And by, I think, January 2nd, the cabinet is supposed to pass the draft itself, and now then the government will start spending within the limited time. But the thing is, no discretionary spending or no major project can be included in here. Only the spending that's based on the existing law, and that's absolutely necessary for running the government itself, such as paying the government workers, for instance, will only continue on. And this means big limitation in terms of what government can do in terms of its fiscal policy and overall operations of the government, because there could be absolutely no new kind of program that can be executed under this so-called provisional budget.
You know, Dr. Kim, however, this is not the first time that we have seen the Parliament delaying the passing of the budget bill. In fact, we almost see it every year.
Right.
Now, why is it that we're talking about this provisional budget so seriously this time?
Right. This is a very important question. I don't think Korean media has been doing a good job explaining this. In only a few sources, they specify what the reason is this year. As you said, ever since 2003, I don't think we had a year when the National Assembly passed the following year's budget on time, which is December 2nd. So never happened for the past about 10 years. But the thing is, for the past 10 years, what happened was every time there was this political wrangle, dispute, and all this disagreements. And at the final moment, what happens is the what do you call it, the spokesman or the head of the National Assembly.
The Speaker.
The Speaker,
the
I'm sorry.
National Assembly
the
Speaker.
National Assembly Speaker actually would send the bill based on the government draft to the main floor vote. And there will be a discussion, wrangling, and all that. Somehow, majority party, with the help of other, non-affiliated lawmakers, would actually pass the bill. So every year, even though we had terrible delays, we passed the regular bill before the beginning of the following year. But this time, what's happening is, because of this new law of running National Assembly, the Speaker of the House, Speaker of the National Assembly, is now prohibited from sending the bill on his or her own right to the main floor vote now. So that way is closed now. That option is closed. And as a way of fixing that problem, actually, government has, and the National Assembly has agreed to have automatic submission, not by the Speaker himself or herself, but just automatic submission to the main floor vote. But that cannot be done this year. According to the law, it will start from next year, 2014. So this particular year, at the end of 2013 and beginning of 2014, Korea does not have a way to pass the budget at the National Assembly without the consensus between both opposition and the ruling party. So this is a very special year. And next year, we will have this automatic submission. But this is a very special year, and that's why they're saying for the first time, we might actually get to see the provisional budget being put into practice.
So basically, because we're kind of sandwiched between
stuck in between,
between old law going in effect and
Bingo.
new law going into effect.
Right, exactly.
Now, would you say that the issues that stand in the way of getting the budget bill passed on time this year seem more daunting than ever before?
Oh yeah, there's no question about that. Yesterday, of course, the reason why we are talking about this today is yesterday's passing of the appointment resolution for the chief of the state audit board, and the way it passed was something that opposition party did not like at all, and the opposition party is boycotting the process itself. But even beyond that issue, we have all these issues about creating a special committee for investigating the alleged, corruption relating the presidential election last year. That's only a big part of it. There are other issues, such as the opposition party's opposition against the ideas of this current administration for introducing new policy initiatives and all that. There's a long list of things that needs to be worked out, and that needs to be worked out for the next about like a week or two. And the way many political analysts see it, there seems to be no way out of this. That's why a lot of people are very much concerned.
Right. So what happens if we have a provisional budget for the first time in Korean history? I mean, would we have a government shutdown like the one we saw in the U.S.?
There is some concern about that because, I mean, next year's budget is 357 trillion won, which is a considerable increase from 342 trillion won of this year. And that is not going to be materialized within the framework of provisional budget. And the thing is, as I mentioned, no new programs, only very limited spending can be allowed. And the critical part of it is that financing of it, the government borrowing will not be allowed. The government cannot issue bonds or borrow from other sources to finance its spending. The government will only have to rely upon the tax revenue plus whatever the cash reserve it has. And that also will very much limit overall scope of the spending itself. So some people are saying the government shutdown may be possible indeed. So we'll need more time on that question. But politically speaking also, as a consequence of introducing provisional budget, a lot of people are saying that An Chul-soo, the third party possible creator, and his group and his supporters will win big time as Korean people get to see the execution of the provisional budget for the first time as a result of this failure between the major two parties. So there is also very considerable political impact that will be resulting from this possible failure this time.
Right, but even if we put all the politics aside, falling to having to resort for the provisional bill is something that we want to avoid at all times. What needs to be done in order for us to avoid it? Right,
this needs to be avoided for many reasons, but one key reason is, of course, national credit rating itself could be affected as well. What needs to be done? Well, they'll have to really hurry up. They'll have to meaning the lawmakers will have to stay up all night, perhaps working all the weekends. They usually, normal times, need about 3 weeks to review the budget within these committees, all these specialized committees, right, for their own areas. And after that, the budget committee itself will have to draft their own draft. That needs another week. So we don't have the right timetable to meet the deadline by the end of the year. Even though law itself says National Assembly will have to pass this by December 2, that's already out of the question. That's not going to get done. So like any other year, we will fight against the time of the end of the year date, perhaps December 31st. But with that deadline in mind, in terms of my calculation, we don't have time. So it's going to be very difficult. On top of that, the National Assembly will have to pass several laws to make the new government proposed budget possible, because without laws that allows this spending cannot go ahead. So it's a tough one, right, at this point. So as I said, I don't know how this can be done, but in the meantime, we know the government is working on preparing the plan for the provisional budget in case National Assembly fails to meet the deadline. So we need more time, but we don't have that much time to watch.
Right, and lawmakers, if they can, should get to work and get this bill passed. All right, Dr. Kim Byoung-joo, thank you so much for shedding light on a very important point that was overlooked by many of the experts here. Right. And we'll see you on Monday.
Thank you.